I watched my brother's hand hover over the signature line, his Mont Blanc pen gleaming under the fluorescent lights of my corner office. My mother sat beside him, that practiced smile stretching across her face, the one that used to work when I was 12. My father stood by the window, pretending to admire the Seattle skyline, but I could see his reflection. He was watching me. "It's just estate planning, Maya," Marcus said, sliding the document closer. "Dad's getting older. We need to consolidate the family assets to minimize tax exposure. You understand. You're a lawyer now. Now." As if the 7 years it took me to become one didn't matter. As if those years working as a paralegal, studying for the bar at night, living in a studio apartment while he drove a Tesla, were just a minor detour. I picked up the document. "Power of attorney," it read across the top. My eyes scanned down. Standard language about granting authority over financial decisions. But there, in paragraph 3, buried in the legalese, including but not limited to all banking accounts, investment portfolios, and real estate holdings in the name of Maya Chen. "This gives you control over my assets," I said, looking up at Marcus. "Our family's assets," my mother corrected gently. "We're a family, Maya. We share everything." The irony was so thick I could taste it. We shared everything except when it came to sacrifices. Those I made alone. 10 years ago, I was 3 months from graduating law school. Top 15% of my class. Summer associate position waiting at a V20 firm. And then Marcus's startup needed capital. Not a loan from a bank. Banks wanted collateral, business plans, accountability. No, he needed family money. He needed my tuition for senior year. "Maya's always been so strong," my mother had said back then, sitting in my dorm room. "And you're so close to finishing, you can always go back." But Marcus, this is his one shot. The market timing is perfect. If we don't invest now, he'll lose the opportunity. I was 22. I didn't know how to say no to her. I dropped out with 1 semester remaining, gave them $78,000, my entire college fund, the one my grandmother had left me. Marcus promised he'd pay me back within 2 years, once the company went public. That was a decade ago. The company never went public. It barely went anywhere. But somehow, Marcus always had money for a new car, a waterfront condo, vacations to Cabo. And I worked as a paralegal for 5 years at $42,000 a year, saved every penny, put myself through night school, and finally passed the bar at 29. Now I'm 32. Junior partner at Chen & Associates, specializing in intellectual property law. Last week, I won a patent infringement case that resulted in a $500,000 bonus. The firm announced it in their newsletter. 48 hours later, my family called. They needed to see me. Family matter. Urgent. "So you'll sign?" Marcus asked now, pen still hovering. I looked at the 3 of them. My mother's expectant smile. My father's careful neutrality. Marcus's barely concealed impatience. "Can I read through it first?" I asked. "I'm a lawyer. I have to actually read contracts." "Of course," my father said quickly. "Take your time, sweetheart." I pulled the document closer, making a show of reading carefully. I didn't need to. I'd spotted the trap the moment I saw the header. This wasn't estate planning. This was a legal instrument giving Marcus complete access to my bank accounts, my investment portfolio, my bonus. "There's a typo here," I said, pulling out my red pen. Paragraph 5, line 3. Principal should be principal. Marcus's jaw tightened. "Does it matter?" "In legal documents? Always." I made the correction, then continued reading, made a few more minor edits, added some initials and margins. Standard lawyer behavior. They watched me, trying not to look anxious. Finally, I set down my pen. "You know what? You're right. We're family. We should protect family assets." The relief on their faces was almost comical. I signed with a flourish. There, all done. My mother actually clapped her hands. "Oh, Maya, thank you. This means so much to your father and me. And Marcus has been so worried about the tax implications." "I'm sure he has," I said, standing. "I actually need to get to a meeting. I'll walk you out." We took the elevator down together. 23 floors of awkward small talk. My mother asked about my apartment. My father mentioned the Seahawks. Marcus was already on his phone, probably texting his wife about the money. "Well," my mother said as we reached the lobby, "we'll let you get back to work." "Thank you again, sweetheart." She hugged me. She actually hugged me. Over her shoulder, I saw Marcus already heading for the parking garage. "Drive safe," I called after them. I waited until they were gone. Then I went back upstairs to my office, closed the door, and made a phone call. Pierce? It's Maya. They took the bait. Yes, they signed the fake. No, they didn't notice. Okay, I'll wait for your call. I hung up and pulled out the real document from my desk drawer, the one they'd actually signed. In their rush, none of them had noticed that the power of attorney I'd given them to sign was actually a notice of intent to file legal action, complete with their signatures acknowledging receipt. My phone buzzed. Text from Marcus. Wire transfer is being difficult. Says I need additional verification. Can you call the bank? I smiled and texted back. Sure, give me an hour. In a meeting. I wasn't in a meeting. I was watching. 30 minutes later, my phone rang. Unknown number. Miss Chen? This is Agent Rodriguez with the IRS Criminal Investigation Division. We received some documentation regarding your brother's business activities. Do you have time to speak with us? I have all the time in the world, I said. Here's what Marcus didn't know. When you give your lawyer sister $78,000 of her inheritance money, and she spends the next decade becoming an IP attorney, she learns things, like how to research public records, how to trace company formations, how to identify shell corporations. And when that same sister wins a major case and suddenly receives a large bonus, and her family suddenly wants her to sign away access to her accounts, she gets curious. She starts looking at her brother's tax returns, the ones he accidentally left on his iPad when he visited last Christmas. She finds interesting things, like offshore accounts, like companies registered in Delaware that report zero income but somehow fund a very expensive lifestyle, like 7 years of tax returns that don't quite add up. And when she's absolutely certain, she makes some calls to the IRS, to the FBI's Financial Crimes Division, to her own bank, to put alerts on her accounts. And then she sets a trap. My office phone rang at 3:30. Marcus. I let it go to voicemail. 4 p.m., my mother. Voicemail. 4:15. Marcus again, from a different number. I answered. What the fuck did you do? He screamed. I signed your document, I said calmly. Just like you asked. My accounts are frozen. The bank says there's an IRS investigation. Maya, fix this. I can't fix a federal investigation, Marcus. That's not my area of law. You did this. You reported me. I'm an officer of the court, I said. If I happen to notice potential tax fraud, I have an ethical obligation to report it. The line went dead. 5 p.m. My father, calling from my mother's phone, his voice shaking. Maya, what's happening? The IRS is at our house. They're asking about transfers we made to Marcus's companies. Why are they asking us? Because you co-signed on 3 of his business loans, I said. Did you forget that? Did you think those signatures didn't matter? But we didn't know. You never asked, I said. Just like you never asked what dropping out of law school would do to me. You just assumed I'd recover, that I was strong enough. Isn't that what Mom always said? Maya's strong. Maya will be fine. Please, he said. We're your parents. Then act like it, I said, and hung up. The calls continued into the evening. I ignored them all. At 7 p.m., I left the office and drove home, stopping at Whole Foods to pick up ingredients for dinner. Salmon, asparagus, a nice Pinot Grigio. I was celebrating. When I got home, there were 17 missed calls. I poured myself a glass of wine and listened to the voicemails while I cooked. Marcus, message 3. You sanctimonious bitch. You think you're so smart? You think you're better than us? You're just jealous because I was successful and you had to claw your way up from nothing. I smiled at that one. Clawed my way up from nothing with $78,000 less than nothing, actually. My mother, message 7. Maya, honey, please call us. There's been a terrible misunderstanding. We would never try to take your money. The document was just for protection. For all of us. Please, we need to talk about this. My father, message 12. The federal agents say Marcus might face criminal charges. They're talking about 3 to 5 years. Maya, he's your brother. Your only brother. Please, isn't there something you can do? I deleted them all. Over the next 3 weeks, I watched it unfold. Marcus's assets, the real ones, hidden in corporate shells, were seized pending investigation. The IRS audit expanded to include my parents, who'd accepted gifts from Marcus's companies totaling over $300,000 in the past 5 years, none of which they'd reported as income. My phone kept ringing. I kept not answering. At night, I slept better than I had in years. 4 months later, I received a certified letter. Settlement offer from Marcus's attorney. He would plead guilty to tax evasion, accept 3 years probation and pay restitution. In exchange for a reduced sentence, he would repay me the $78,000 plus 10 years of interest, calculated at 6%, compounded annually. Total, $140,000. My parents would pay fines $50,000 each and do community service. No jail time, but the IRS would audit them annually for the next 5 years. I signed the settlement agreement, not because I forgave them, because I wanted it over. The check arrived 6 weeks later. I deposited it and immediately transferred $100,000 to a new account. I called it the Maya Chen Educational Fund. Then I called my old law school. I'd like to establish a scholarship, I told the development office, for students whose families prevented them from completing their degree. Full tuition, final year, 1 recipient per year, renewable indefinitely. That's incredibly generous, the woman said. What would you like to name it? I thought about my grandmother, who'd left me that original $78,000. Who'd told me education was the one thing no one could take away. Who'd died 6 months before I had to drop out and never knew what happened to her gift. The Margaret Chen Second Chances Scholarship, I said. 1 year later, I sat in the audience at the law school graduation ceremony. The first recipient of the scholarship, a 26-year-old woman who dropped out to care for her sick mother, then spent 3 years working to save enough to return, walked across the stage to accept her diploma. She didn't know I was there. The scholarship was anonymous, but I knew, and that was enough. That evening, I returned to my apartment to find a letter in my mailbox. Handwritten envelope, my mother's handwriting. I stood in the lobby for a long moment, holding it. Then I walked to the trash chute and dropped it in. I didn't need to read it. Nothing she could write would change what happened. Nothing she could say would give me back those years. Some families teach you love. Some teach you loyalty. Mine taught me the most valuable lesson of all. The difference between people who say they're family and people who act like it. I went upstairs, poured myself that Pinot Grigio, and looked out at the Seattle skyline, my skyline now, in the office I'd earned, with the career I'd built, with money that was mine and mine alone. My phone buzzed. Text from Pierce, my friend from the IRS. Heard Marcus violated probation. Spending too much again. They're recommending jail time now. Thought you'd want to know. I stared at the message for a moment, waited for guilt, for regret, for that voice that used to tell me, family comes first. Nothing came. I deleted the text and raised my glass to my reflection in the window. Here's to second chances, I said to the empty room, for people who actually deserve them. The city lights glittered below me, full of promise, full of possibility, full of people who'd carved out their own success without sacrificing themselves on the altar of family obligation. I took a sip of wine. It tasted like victory. Tomorrow, the scholarship recipient would start her summer associate position at a top firm. Next year, another student would get the same chance. And the year after that, another. My grandmother's money, filtered through betrayal and redemption, transformed into something that would outlast all of us. Marcus could rot in jail for all I cared. My parents could write all the letters they wanted. I had better things to do. I had futures to fund, starting with my own.